This wasn't supposed to happen. What started as a normal podcast conversation suddenly turned into one of the darkest discussions the Chicago drill scene has seen in years. No screaming. No fake internet drama. Just raw street talk. Cold. Unfiltered. And the second clips from the interview started spreading online, people instantly realized this wasn't entertainment anymore. It felt like a warning. Because during the conversation, the speaker casually talked about killers being worshipped online like celebrities, and then indirectly mentioned King Von while explaining how the internet turned dangerous street figures into legends. That's when social media froze. And then everything changed. Fans immediately started connecting dots between Chicago drill culture, internet obsession, and the way violence slowly became content for millions of people online. TikTok pages started reposting the clips. YouTube channels uploaded breakdowns within hours. Twitter timelines exploded with debates about whether drill music was exposing reality or feeding it. But then the conversation became even darker. The speaker started discussing real killers, body counts, fear psychology, prison culture, trauma, and why some people from Chicago become emotionally numb to violence before they're even adults. At one point, he even referenced T. Roy as somebody the streets feared for real, not the internet version. And that's where the story gets messy. Because according to fans online, this wasn't just another viral interview anymore. People believed the conversation accidentally exposed the hidden psychology behind Chicago drill culture itself. The trauma, the manipulation, the desensitization, the addiction to danger. No cap, the internet went crazy. And what happened next shocked social media even more. Because instead of condemning the conversation, millions of people became obsessed with it. The internet was never supposed to hear this conversation. But the second those clips leaked online, Chicago drill fans instantly knew something dangerous had just happened. Within hours, TikTok pages were reposting the footage with dark cinematic music. Twitter timelines exploded. YouTube channels started uploading breakdown videos in all caps. And suddenly, everybody was talking about the same thing. Did this interview just accidentally expose the real psychology behind Chicago drill culture? Because what made the conversation terrifying wasn't screaming. It was how calm everybody sounded while talking about death, killers, fear, revenge, and trauma like it was normal everyday life. And no cap, that's what shocked the internet most. Especially once King Von got indirectly mentioned. The second fans heard that, social media instantly started connecting dots between Von, O-Block, drill culture, and the internet's obsession with dangerous street figures. Old interviews resurfaced overnight. People reposted clips of Von laughing while talking about pain. TikTok edits flooded timelines showing old footage of Chicago rappers beside captions like "They warned US," and this was never just music. And then everything changed. Because suddenly this wasn't just another viral podcast anymore. It became a full-blown internet investigation into Chicago drill itself. Fans started revisiting the entire history of the scene. Chief Keef creating the blueprint. Lil Durk surviving industry pressure while watching friends die around him. FBG Duck becoming one of the biggest controversial names connected to drill politics before his death shocked social media. T. Roy becoming almost mythological online after fans started treating old street stories like superhero lore. And according to critics, that's exactly where things became dangerous. Because somewhere along the way, audiences stopped listening to drill music for the music. They started consuming the violence behind it like entertainment. That's what the speaker in the interview was really hinting at. At one point, he talked about how the internet worships killers, and instantly fans thought about King Von. Not because he directly blamed Von for anything, but because Von became one of the biggest symbols of Chicago drill mythology after his death. Millions of fans who never stepped foot in Chicago started treating street history like Netflix episodes. And social media made it worse. Algorithms rewarded chaos. The more violent the story sounded, the more views it got. The more mysterious the rapper looked, the bigger the fan base became. The more dangerous the rumors felt, the faster clips spread online. And according to some fans, that transformed drill culture forever. Because now artists weren't just competing musically anymore. They were competing for internet mythology. Reputation became content. Pain became branding. Trauma became engagement. And this is where things got extremely uncomfortable. Because while reaction channels turned these stories into entertainment, real people were still dying behind the scenes. Families were grieving. Mothers were losing sons. Friends were burying childhood friends, while social media users turned tragedies into edits with slow music and dramatic captions. That contradiction exploded online after the interview clips went viral. Some people blamed blogs. Others blamed fans. Others blamed the industry itself. But nobody could deny one thing: the internet became addicted to Chicago drill culture. Especially after the rise of rappers like King Von. Because Von didn't rap like somebody telling stories. He rapped like somebody reliving memories. That realism changed everything. Fans became emotionally obsessed with him because his music felt cinematic and dangerous at the same time. Songs like Crazy Story didn't sound fictional to audiences. They sounded real. And once social media connected authenticity with danger, King Von's image exploded online faster than almost anybody expected. But according to critics, that fame came with a dark cost. Because suddenly millions of fans wanted more than music. They wanted street stories. They wanted bodies. They wanted real killers. And no cap, some people believe the internet pushed drill culture into an even darker direction because controversy started generating more attention than talent itself. That's why the interview hit people emotionally. The speaker sounded exhausted by the mythology. At one point, he basically implied that real killers don't move like the internet thinks they do. According to him, the most dangerous people usually stay quiet while social media glorifies exaggerated versions of street life for clicks. That line alone sent Twitter into chaos. Fans started debating whether Chicago drill culture had been completely misunderstood by mainstream audiences for years. Some argued the music was simply raw storytelling from traumatized environments. Others believed the industry intentionally monetized destruction because dangerous narratives sell faster than positive ones. And then another shocking moment happened. The speaker casually brought up body counts. Not in a bragging way. In a numb way. Like somebody discussing weather. That disturbed viewers badly. Because suddenly audiences realized they weren't listening to normal rap gossip anymore. They were listening to somebody emotionally desensitized to violence after years inside chaotic environments. And according to fans online, that may have been the darkest part of the entire interview. The trauma sounded normal to him. That realization changed the entire tone of social media reactions. Suddenly people started revisiting old footage of Chicago rappers differently. Lil Reese talking about survival. G Herbo speaking about PTSD and trauma in interviews. Polo G discussing mental pressure and growing up around violence. Fans started noticing how often Chicago artists referenced paranoia, death, loyalty issues, revenge, and emotional numbness in their music. And according to some viewers, maybe those weren't lyrics. Maybe those were warnings. That's when the internet went completely insane. TikTok creators started making Chicago drill exposed documentaries overnight. YouTube channels uploaded hour-long breakdowns connecting old deaths, interviews, live streams, and songs together. Fans created conspiracy-style timelines trying to explain how drill culture evolved from local survival music into one of the most commercially successful and controversial movements in rap history. But then the conversation became even darker. The speaker started talking about childhood trauma, watching violence inside the home, drinking young, growing up emotionally desensitized, seeing fear become normal. And suddenly, people understood why the interview felt so heavy emotionally. Because underneath all the killer conversations and internet mythology was something much deeper: broken environments creating broken mindsets. That's what some critics believe drill culture accidentally exposed to the world. Not just violence, but survival psychology. And according to fans online, once social media turned survival psychology into entertainment, everything changed forever. Especially in Chicago. Because now every rapper wasn't just an artist anymore. They became characters in an internet narrative millions of strangers felt emotionally invested in. Fans picked sides, debated deaths, analyzed lyrics like evidence, treated real tragedies like TV episodes. And no cap, some people believe the internet stopped seeing Chicago rappers as human beings a long time ago. Which is exactly why this interview scared so many people. Because for a moment, it felt like somebody accidentally told the truth. Main body, part 2. Because for a moment, it felt like somebody accidentally told the truth. And once the internet felt that energy, there was no stopping what happened next. Within hours, social media users started digging through years of old Chicago drill footage, looking for proof that the culture had become way darker than people originally realized. Old live streams resurfaced. Forgotten tweets came back. Fans reposted clips of King Von, Lil Durk, Chief Keef, and FBG Duck speaking about survival, loyalty, betrayal, and death like it was everyday life. And according to fans online, that's what made Chicago drill different from every other rap movement. It didn't feel manufactured. It felt real. Too real. That's why the interview clips exploded emotionally. The speaker wasn't trying to sound tough for entertainment. He sounded emotionally disconnected from violence itself. And that scared people because it forced audiences to realize something uncomfortable. What if drill culture was never performative to begin with? What if people were listening to traumatized environments in real time, while the internet treated it like reality television? That question changed the entire conversation online. Suddenly, fans weren't debating lyrics anymore. They were debating psychology. Because the deeper people looked into Chicago drill history, the more they noticed one disturbing pattern. Almost every major rapper from the scene talked about paranoia, revenge, trust issues, death, PTSD, or emotional numbness at some point. G Herbo openly discussed trauma and mental health in multiple interviews. Polo G repeatedly talked about depression, anxiety, and losing friends growing up in Chicago. Even Lil Bibby once explained how normalized violence became for young people in certain neighborhoods. But according to critics, the internet ignored those warnings completely. Instead, audiences focused on the danger, the mystery, the body counts, the rumors. And that's where things got dangerous. Because once algorithms realized violent Chicago stories generated insane engagement, the entire internet economy around drill culture exploded. Bloggers started farming beefs for clicks. Reaction channels made careers covering Chicago politics. TikTok creators turned real deaths into storytime breakdowns. Fans who had never stepped foot in Chicago suddenly acted like experts on decades of street history. And no cap, some people believe social media made everything worse. Because before the internet, street conflicts mostly stayed local. Now millions of strangers were emotionally invested in them daily. That changed everything. Especially once fans started turning rappers into characters. That's what many critics believe happened to King Von after his music exploded globally. People stopped seeing him as a human being dealing with pressure, trauma, fame, and survival instincts. Instead, the internet transformed him into mythology. Every interview became evidence. Every lyric became confession. Every old rumor became part of a giant online narrative fans obsessed over non-stop. And according to some viewers, the interview accidentally exposed how unhealthy that obsession became. Because during one of the darkest moments in the conversation, the speaker casually talked about killers with almost zero emotional reaction. Not excitement. Not fear. Just emotional numbness. That moment disturbed social media badly because audiences realized they were hearing somebody whose worldview had been shaped entirely by survival. That's when people started revisiting old Chicago interviews differently. Fans reposted clips of rappers nervously laughing while discussing death around them. They noticed how casually artists talked about funerals, paranoia, enemies, and trauma. Some viewers even pointed out how many Chicago rappers seemed emotionally exhausted long before fame fully arrived. And that realization hit hard online. Because suddenly the drill conversation became less about music and more about damage. Emotional damage. Psychological damage. Generational damage. That's why the interview kept spreading. Not because it sounded entertaining, because it sounded real. And once audiences sense authenticity online, they become obsessed instantly. Then another shocking debate exploded across Twitter. Some fans started arguing that Chicago drill culture may have unintentionally exposed America's obsession with violence itself. According to critics, people consume drill music the same way audiences consume true crime documentaries, emotionally fascinated by danger while remaining disconnected from the real pain behind it. That comparison went viral immediately, especially because TikTok edits started making the situation even darker. Slow-motion clips, sad piano music, old footage of Chicago rappers smiling before tragedies happened. Millions of views flooded these videos overnight. And according to some fans, the internet had officially crossed the line between documenting trauma and romanticizing it. That accusation created chaos online. Some people blamed blogs for exploiting violence. Others blamed record labels. Others blamed the audience itself. But nobody could agree on where the cycle actually started. And this is where things got messy. Because while critics attacked drill culture publicly, supporters pushed back aggressively. They argued Chicago rappers were simply documenting realities mainstream media ignored for years. According to them, drill music didn't create violence. It exposed environments already filled with it. Some fans even argued that audiences only became uncomfortable because the music forced people to hear truths society usually avoids. That debate completely divided the internet. Especially once older names from Chicago's early drill era started resurfacing again. Fans revisited stories connected to JoJo, L.A. Capone, and other young artists whose careers and lives became deeply tied to internet-era drill culture. Suddenly people realized how many stories connected to the scene ended in tragedy, prison, addiction, paranoia, or emotional collapse. And according to some viewers, the interview exposed exactly why. Because when survival becomes normal during childhood, emotional numbness can become survival too. That line terrified people online, especially after the speaker discussed violence almost like adrenaline addiction. At one point, he described confrontation with disturbing emotional familiarity, almost like chaos became psychologically comforting after years of exposure to it. And that's when social media users started saying the interview sounded more like a trauma documentary than a podcast. No cap. Some people couldn't even finish watching it comfortably. But others became addicted to it. Because deep down, audiences wanted to understand the mindset. How does somebody become emotionally desensitized to violence? How does fear stop feeling like fear? How does survival become identity? Those questions turned the interview into one of the most discussed Chicago drill conversations online. And then another disturbing theory started spreading. Some fans believe the music industry secretly benefits from keeping drill culture controversial because danger generates attention faster than positivity. According to internet speculation, labels, blogs, and platforms all profit whenever chaos trends online. The more emotional the story becomes, the bigger the engagement numbers grow. That theory exploded after fans noticed how quickly every violent Chicago-related topic trends across platforms. Deaths trend. Beefs trend. Arrests trend. Rumors trend. Trauma trends. And according to critics, that creates a dangerous incentive structure around hip-hop culture itself, especially for younger artists watching. Because once they see controversy generating millions of views, pressure starts building. Fans expect authenticity. The internet rewards danger. Algorithms push conflict. And suddenly artists feel trapped between survival, entertainment, and reputation all at once. That's why many viewers connected the interview directly to Lil Durk and King Von's rise together. Fans argued both artists represented opposite sides of Chicago drill's evolution, survival through success, and the emotional cost attached to it. But then the conversation became even darker. Because according to some fans online, the internet no longer separates music from real-life violence at all. It consumes both equally. And that realization made the interview feel terrifyingly honest. Especially once viewers started asking themselves one uncomfortable question: if the internet keeps rewarding pain with attention, If the internet keeps rewarding pain with attention, what happens next? That question completely changed the energy around the interview. Because suddenly people weren't only talking about Chicago drill anymore. They started talking about the internet itself. The algorithms, the reaction channels, the blogs, the fans. The way social media transformed real trauma into one of the most profitable forms of entertainment online. And according to some critics, King Von became one of the biggest examples of that transformation. Not because he created the culture, but because the internet turned him into a symbol of it. That's why every old clip of Vaughn suddenly started resurfacing again after the interview went viral. Fans reposted interviews where he laughed while discussing pain. Old livestream moments started trending. TikTok edits with emotional music flooded timelines again. Millions of people who never knew him personally began speaking about him like a mythical figure instead of a real person who lived through trauma, pressure, paranoia, and fame all at once. And no cap, that realization made the situation feel darker than ever. Because according to some fans, the internet became emotionally addicted to dangerous stories. The more tragic the narrative becomes, the more attention it receives. That's why every time a Chicago rapper trends, audiences instantly search for hidden drama, violence, betrayals, and street politics before they even talk about the music. And the interview exposed that obsession perfectly. Especially during the moments where the speaker talked about killers with almost zero emotional reaction. Social media users said it sounded like somebody whose brain had adapted to survival mode permanently. Violence didn't sound shocking to him anymore. Fear didn't sound unusual. Trauma sounded normal. That disturbed millions of viewers. But at the same time, people couldn't stop replaying the clips. Because deep down, audiences wanted to understand the psychology behind Chicago drill culture. Not the music. The mindset. And this is where things became extremely uncomfortable online. Some fans started saying drill music accidentally exposed what happens when entire generations grow up emotionally desensitized to chaos. Others argued the internet itself made the problem worse by turning survival stories into entertainment for millions of strangers disconnected from the consequences behind them. That debate exploded across social media. Especially once fans started revisiting old footage of Lil Durk speaking emotionally about losing friends. Clips of G Herbo discussing PTSD resurfaced again. People reposted interviews where Polo G talked about anxiety, mental pressure, and trauma growing up in Chicago. And suddenly, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Almost every major Chicago rapper had warned audiences about emotional damage at some point. But according to critics, the internet ignored those warnings because the violence looked more entertaining than the pain behind it. That realization hit hard. Because once fans started connecting all the dots together, the interview no longer felt like random street talk anymore. It felt like a confession. A confession about what drill culture became after social media got involved. And according to some viewers, that's exactly why the clip spread so aggressively online. People sensed authenticity. Not polished industry PR. Not fake podcast drama. Real emotional numbness. Real survival mentality. Real trauma hidden underneath hypermasculine street culture. That's why audiences became obsessed with the conversation. Because for a moment, it felt like somebody stopped performing for the internet and accidentally revealed the truth behind the image. And that truth sounded terrifying. Especially when viewers started asking themselves another uncomfortable question. How many Chicago rappers were actually crying for help inside their music while audiences treated it like entertainment? That theory exploded online. Fans revisited old lyrics differently. Old tweets felt darker. Old interviews suddenly sounded emotional instead of gangster. Some people even argued that drill music may eventually be remembered less as a rap genre, and more as a public archive of trauma documented in real time. And honestly, that idea scared a lot of people, because it forced audiences to confront something uncomfortable about themselves too. Why are people so fascinated by destruction? Why does danger generate more clicks than healing? Why do tragic stories trend faster than positive ones? And according to some critics, social media already answered those questions years ago. Because pain sells. chaos trends. Fear goes viral. And the Chicago drill scene became one of the clearest examples of that reality on the internet. That's why this interview hit differently. It didn't feel scripted. It didn't feel manufactured. It felt like somebody emotionally exhausted by violence trying to explain a world most audiences only consume through headlines, diss songs, documentaries, and TikTok edits. And once people understood that, the entire conversation became heavier emotionally. Especially after viewers revisited the names connected to Chicago drill history. Chief Keef changing hip-hop forever at a young age. FBG Duck becoming part of one of drill culture's most controversial internet narratives. T-Roy becoming mythologized online after his death. And King Von becoming one of the most emotionally discussed rappers of the entire era. According to fans online, these weren't just artists anymore. They became internet legends. And maybe that's exactly what the speaker was warning about from the beginning. Because once real people become mythology online, reality starts disappearing completely. And honestly, maybe that's the darkest truth the interview exposed. Not just what happened in Chicago, but what the internet turned it into. Because somewhere between the music, the blogs, the live streams, the reaction channels, the TikTok edits, and the conspiracy theories, real trauma slowly became worldwide entertainment. And according to some fans, King Von became one of the biggest symbols of that transformation. A rapper, a storyteller, a controversial figure, and eventually, an internet mythology millions of people became emotionally obsessed with. But this conversation also forced people to confront something uncomfortable about themselves. Why are audiences so addicted to dangerous stories? Why do violent narratives spread faster than healing ones? And did social media accidentally turn Chicago drill culture into something bigger and darker than music itself? That's the question people are still arguing about right now. Some believe drill music exposed real pain the world ignored for years. Others believe the internet monetized trauma until audiences stopped seeing rappers as human beings altogether. And no cap, both sides might be telling part of the truth. But now I want to hear from you. Do you think the internet made Chicago drill culture worse? Was the speaker exposing reality or glorifying it? And do you believe social media turned rappers like King Von into mythology instead of human beings? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is getting bigger every day. And trust me, people are nowhere near done debating this topic. So hit that like button, subscribe, and turn notifications on because we're going to keep covering every major update, every viral interview, and every hidden truth the internet tries to ignore. Because something tells me, this story is far from over.